introductions, but again, thank you for being with us today. My name is Alexa Tinsley. I am the Director of Programs for Jett Foundation. I just want to thank you all for being here today with us on our webinar on service dogs. We welcome Lindsay Hall and Jennifer Arnold from Canine Assistance. So, Lindsay, do you want to tell them a little bit about who you are?
Sure. Yes. So I am Lindsay Hall. I started out as a volunteer at Canine Assistance, and I now serve as the administrative assistant. So I work closely with Jennifer Arnold. So I've been on staff now just about 3 years. And it's an incredible privilege to get to work with not only the dogs, but also our incredible recipients as well.
So this is Jennifer Arnold. She is the founder of Canine Assistance. She founded Canine Assistance in 1991. They are located just north of Atlanta, Georgia. In her work with Canine Assistance, she's developed the bond-based approach to living and working with dogs. She's also a New York Times bestselling author with multiple books, and she's been featured in multiple newspapers, online publications, as well as numerous television programs. And then she's very excited today to talk to you guys about Canine Assistance. Before we get started, I am going to say a few things. We are recording this, so if you need to come back and watch it later, or if you have any, if you miss any of it, it will be recorded. If there was somebody that you know that wanted to be on this but was not able to, we will share the recording link with everybody who is on the call today to be able to spread the word, and it will be on our YouTube and Facebook as well after the fact. If you need closed captioning, there is a closed captioning button. It says CC on the bottom of your screen. You should be able to go there and translate into any language of your choosing. We will have a Q&A at the end. We do prefer to have those questions go through the Q&A panel, which is a box with a little question mark at the bottom of your screen. We do try to monitor the chat for any questions that come in there, and we are streaming to Facebook Live as well. We do try to get all those questions, but if for some reason we don't get to your questions today, we will go ahead and forward them over to Jennifer to see if we can get them answered for you. And with that, I will hand it over to Jennifer and see if we can get your screen shared.
I went through some of that, but I did want to give you guys a little info on my background. And while we're going to be talking about canine assistance and how we do service dogs, I'm going to try to give you what information I have about how other programs operate also, so that you have that. When I was 16, I was diagnosed with MS, and this is my background, why I got into this. My diagnosis has since been changed to a kind of a cousin of MS, relapsing polychondritis. And with the help of mega steroids, I've remained ambulatory for a long time now. But I used a chair for a little over 2.5 years. And when I was first diagnosed, I didn't handle it very well. So, very long story shortened. My dad, I was the fourth and final, maybe surprise child in the family. And so my dad was a physician in Atlanta, and he had just read an article about a woman who was teaching dogs to help people who use wheelchairs. And my whole family we're huge animal lovers. So dad reached out to this woman, and she remembers talking to him, which is very tender to me. But unfortunately, she had, 5 dogs inside her house, and there was no way she could send a dog across the country to Georgia. But dad hadn't told me about that. He just came one night and sat on the edge of my bed and said, I'm not saying this is why you got sick. I would never say that to you. But I am saying maybe this is something you can do with it. And he explained about service dogs. And from that moment, I was hooked. It is all I have ever wanted to do. Unfortunately, my dad was walking home from my grandmother's house 2 weeks after Thanksgiving. Right after that, he was hit by a drunk driver on a motorcycle, and he died early the next morning at the hospital where he had worked for most of his career. And his life insurance, of all the weird things, had an exclusionary clause against death by two-wheeled vehicle intended for people who were driving or riding on motorcycles, but because of the way it was written, it was upheld. And we lost the insurance company's court costs. So it took my mom and I 11 years to raise the money to finally start the program. But we did. December 31st, 1991. So, all right, let's see the next slide, please. We are just north of Atlanta in Alpharetta, Georgia. We work with people who have mobility difficulties, epilepsy, type 1 diabetes, or other said medical needs. But we do some work with different scent detection possibilities, like for people who have Addison's, for example. We place community service facility dogs, hospital dogs in pediatric hospitals across the country. That was kind of an accident that we got into that. Our dogs are just very kind and benevolent, and so they became popular. We've placed almost 3,000 dogs to date. Like you heard, I developed the bond-based approach. Our methods, let's just say we've evolved over the 33 years that we've been here. 34 almost. Well, not yeah, but so in the beginning, we were very old school, choke chain, pinch collar, leash correction. My mom and I had no idea how to do this, so we got a trainer to come in and help us. And I think she had a big heart, but she kind of scared the pee out of us. My mom and I would hide when she came, just because it was so rough, and we saw that that wasn't really working for a lot of the dogs, and we joked about those dogs needing to go to summer school with me, but what summer school really was just my being very kind to them. And I taught them to retrieve using rawhides and things that were no-nos in the real dog training world. So little by little, we went into a kinder, gentler approach. And ultimately, we ended up really into positive reinforcement training, clicker mostly. And it, the people loved it. I'm not sure that our dogs did. Well, they did. I mean, they liked it better, obviously, than being yanked around by the leash, but they still had tremendous anxiety. And in an effort to figure out, like, for example, going into our 2-week camps that we do when dogs are ready to graduate, and we have people lined up who need the dogs. We have these camps, of recipient camps, and going into those camps in the old days, we just went ahead and put most of our dogs, well, really all of them, on Imodium because they were going to have diarrhea. And back then, my husband, who's our staff veterinarian, and I really thought that the diarrhea was coming from, the increase in treats. But now I don't think that was it at all, because once we changed things, that all went away. So we knew the dogs were still feeling anxious. And again, I'm trying to shorten the story for you guys, but my husband and I kind of did a deep dive on those partnerships that we had, um, you know, teams that we had placed in the past who were extraordinarily successful and what that looked like. And what it turned out to be, talking about humbling, they were the people who stopped doing what we asked them to do after some time at home with their dogs, and basically just got out of the dog's way, um, and helped the dog feel safe. And loved, and the dog began to do more and more and more extraordinary things. Um, so that led my husband and I to look at how dog training, you know, developed really, because it hadn't been a thing for very long. I mean, it's kind of World War One, when you first see it with working dogs, and it certainly hadn't become popular in homes since. I mean, that's been in the last probably 30 or 40 years, and becoming, increasingly popular until the last few years. But what we found was that dog training, like all animal training methods, was kind of stuck in the psychological slash educational school of behaviorism. But the whole idea of classical and operant conditioning. And I'm not saying that those don't exist and that they can't be effective. Certainly, they do exist and they can be effective. What you reward is likely to be repeated. What you punish is less likely to be repeated. But in human education, we've long since gone past that. So in animal training, if you say learning theory, you mean operant conditioning, really. Um, if you say it to an educator, they'll say, a human educator, they'll say, which one? So we wanted to see if there was another way of educating the dogs that might help alleviate some of this anxiety. And that's how we developed the bond based approach. So, next slide. All right. So, I want to talk to you a little bit about service dogs overall and how they can help. Obviously, they can push buttons, they can turn lights on and off, they can open and close doors, they can retrieve things that you dropped. And yes, that the little picture down on the bottom, the second one in, is a dog retrieving a roll of brawny because we were sucking up to Georgia Pacific in an effort to get a grant. But they're all usually pretty strong retrievers. Um, they help a lot in public. They kind of take the focus away from your chair if you use one, or an abnormal gait, etc. So they're great with you in public. Um, and in the middle, you can see a dog who is helping a young man balance. He has Duchenne. So I know that when boys are ambulatory, but falling is a massive risk. That's scary, because quite frankly, I think that dogs do increase the risk. Um, I think it is mitigated somewhat by using a balance harness and having a dog learn to gait, like their person. And they do that. If you look very carefully, it's, I know, hard to see. But if you look very carefully, you can see that the dog's back right paw is up as his right foot is up. The dogs begin to match locomotor synchrony. The dogs begin to match their gaits to their persons, which I find extraordinary. So they can help with balance. They are also, as you can see in the next photo, givers of great love and affection. And I think that makes a difference, especially if you're lonely. It makes a difference. It's nice to have somebody who looks at you and doesn't see that you have a disability or an illness. When the dogs look at you, they see absolute perfection. And I think that does change the way you think about yourself. But of all the things they can do, I think the last picture represents what I've seen really be the most important thing they do, and that is that they bring joy. They make you laugh. And sometimes that laughter can be in kind of short supply. So dogs can do extraordinary things to help people. There is no question. Okay, next slide, please. And canine assistants, the breeds that we use are mostly Goldens, Lab Golden mixes, and Golden Doodles. For the first 6 years, we took all our dogs in from rescue programs and shelters. And I still believe that that is very doable. However, it wasn't doable on a larger scale for us because I kind of ended up in, a knockdown, drag out fights with a golden retriever rescue, which is not what you want because, you know, dogs who have been abandoned obviously are going to bring in a little bit of baggage at least. And if there's a pet home that will take them, we support that. But they absolutely can do this kind of work too. And I'm always careful to say that because I feel it very strongly. So we started a breeding program. Our dogs are bred here. The breeder parents live with volunteer families. And the breeder moms, as a matter of fact, we just had a litter of 12, bless her heart. It was a tough delivery for this mama. Chili is her name, but Chili's doing really well, and all 12 puppies gained weight today. So that was very exciting for us. And as it tends to happen, the mamas, even though they don't live together, they come in season usually very close to one another. So we have another dog who is coming in today who will deliver probably this weekend. Um, I think raising the puppies here, it does give us some advantages. I mean, starting with them really young um, is pretty wonderful. Our dogs, we don't use puppy raisers. A lot of programs will use puppy raisers. So the dogs will go to a family, usually, for, 18 months or so, and then go back into the service dog schools facility to be finished. We don't do that because, I mean, I think the people who raise those dogs are just extraordinary. And I know the system can absolutely work, but I have to tell you that it'd be pretty hard for me to give a dog up after 18 months, even knowing the incredible things that they do. Luckily, there are people in the world apparently who are better than I am, which is wonderful for the world. But we know that that's hard for the families. What we forgot to think about was the impact that it has on the dogs. Um, and it has one. I really feel very strongly that it's hard for them to lose the only family that they've known. So our dogs grow up here, and we have volunteers who take them on outings and home visits to help them get used to being in public and in home environments. But normally, I mean, we've had dogs graduate. This was kind of an emergency situation, but we had a dog graduate at 11 months once. That's really young. And normally, they're around 2 years of age when we feel like they're really ready to graduate. And when we decide that, they're ready to go, they go into a recipient camp to be matched with their future partner. And that's pretty wild. I'll tell you more about that in a few minutes. Okay, let's go to the next slide. All right, I really want to talk for a minute about applying for a dog and what you need to think about because as wonderful as they are dogs. It is likely at some point this animal is going to vomit on your carpet or have terrible diarrhea. They're not robots. None of them are Lassie. We used to because Lassie is a fictional character, but you know what I mean. We used to have dogs that did these incredible things that when we trained before we went bond based, we could really show off because I could send the dog in, our big classroom. I could send the dog across the room to tug open the door, retrieve something, bring it back to me, take something back to the closet, and put it in, close the door, do the lights. It was really quite dramatic, and people were super impressed. The problem was that about 3 weeks to 3 months after they went home, those behaviors tended to go away because they didn't go home with professional dog trainers. So it's another reason that we went in a different direction. But as magical as all of that is, those dogs still make mistakes. They still can't sleep the first few nights they get home, and they need a ton of attention. If you have We had a wonderful dear family come, and the mom was very concerned because they have very nice things in their home. And she didn't want the dog to break anything, or knock anything over. If that's a concern for you, I would think long and hard before you apply, because I can't promise that's not going to happen. So you need to remember their dogs. And as wonderful as they are, you are essentially adopting another child. Um, and this is a child who's never going to grow past being, a toddler like. They can be quite brilliant, but emotionally they stay in that toddler range. So think about it hard before you do it. But if you've decided that's the right thing for you to do, at Canine Assistance, we accept um, applications from children of any age, for children of any age. Age doesn't really, I mean, we consider individual cases. Most programs have a minimum age standard that usually is between, 8 and 10. So you would need to check with individual programs about age issues. Um, I don't know that. I mean, I think you apply when you feel like, so people ask me all the time about what age to apply with different conditions, and I think the answer is really the same for everybody. You need to apply when you're ready. And ready means different things to different people. I mean, if you're getting ready to go on first of all, it may take you, and it will take you several years at least, probably, to get up the waiting list. We've been able to speed that along a little bit. And for example, with Duchenne, you have we consider the severity of the condition when deciding who goes first. So we're not first come, first serve. Everybody is evaluated independently. And we evaluate based on what the dog can do to help physically, socially, emotionally, and medically, if relevant. And that's 50% of it. The other 50% is how appropriate the home is for a dog. Because one of the things that we've learned over and over and over again in our 33 years is the dog has to be happy and feel safe, and before they can be fully functional. And if the dog can't get comfortable in a home, but that's very distressing for everybody. So we're quite careful about that. And as a matter of fact, at Canine Assistance, we now have people fill out, because we don't want anybody to have to fill out that really long application if maybe the family isn't a good fit for us, because we're weird. I mean, I I will be the first to say you know, I mean, we've done it for a long time and I think we're very good at what we do, but we are different. We Bond based means we don't train, we teach. And for a lot of people, that's a difficult concept to grasp. And it's something they just don't really want to deal with. And I understand that. If you are more into, traditional asset set kind of approaches to working with dogs, that's absolutely your prerogative, but we're probably not a great spot for you. So we asked some questions on a pre-app at Canine Assistance that can help us determine whether or not a family would be a good fit for us. If we think you are a good fit, then we ask you to fill out the whole application. And if when you fill out the whole application, it doesn't mean you're absolutely going to get a dog, but it means your odds are really, really, really good that you're going to get a dog from us. If you get turned down based on your pre-app, I would urge you to maybe call our recipient services coordinator, whose name is Nicole, and talk to her about it, um, because you know pressure always helps. So if you feel very strongly that we're the right place for you, and I have I did several books. The last one that I've done is called Love Is All You Need, and it's an easy, relatively quick read. And it might, before you apply with Canine Assistance, it might be a good idea to just look at it because it will give you a good sense of how we approach things. It was written very early on, as we transitioned into bond based, and that started about 14 years ago. At 12 years, we kind of 12 years ago we got brave enough to jump in really. But I urge you, no matter what, to apply to multiple places. Now, if you feel very strongly about you know how dogs should be cared for and what their lives should look like, and we're the only place that you can find, although there are other bond-based programs out there now. uh, n- you know, let us know that you've put all your eggs in our basket because I think that makes a difference too. Staying in touch is helpful. And maybe instead of calling Nicole, you email her. I'll give you her email address at the end of this. But if you are comfortable with different methods, apply everywhere you can. You never know. Now, I'm going to say something that I probably shouldn't say, but the older I've gotten, the less filter I have. I am quite certain that there are programs out there who charge for their service dogs who are wonderful and do exactly what they say they're going to do. And life is beautiful once you come up with the 25 or 40 or whatever thousands that they are asking for. I haven't ever met any dogs from those programs. That's all I can say. So I would be somewhat hesitant about going that route. Um, all right, and this is kind of the appropriate place for this. But we are currently beta testing because there are only so many people that we can bring in each year. We are beta testing a homeschooling program. It's called Handle with Care. I have no idea why it got named that, because it doesn't tell you what it is, but it is homeschooling for dogs. So we help you find the right dog, and you, in essence, raise and educate that dog yourselves with the help of a coach who we work with. And, and you have our support all the way through. So you're not alone in doing it, because that's kind of the other way. When people can't get dogs fast enough, they tend to either buy a dog, um, or they try to do it themselves. And it's harder than you think. But it does seem to be very doable with support. So anyway, that's coming down the pipeline pretty quickly for us. So be aware of that also if that's something you think you can handle. Okay, next screen. All right, so on the far left, that's our little classroom where we bring folks in to learn how to work with their dogs. And they are for first timers, people who've not had dogs from us before. The camp is 2 weeks, and you stay at a local hotel. And most service dog schools do camps this way. There are a few schools, usually smaller, relatively newer ones, will do it where you come in to work with a dog. If you're, they place dogs only very locally, and if you're local, you come in X number of times a month, to work with dogs. But for the big schools, it's usually a recipient camp. And camps are, I mean, it's intense and can be hard, but they're also great because you meet other families, and it is, it's an emotional time, but it's life changing also. Um, so we ask that both parents, if at all possible, if there are two parents, we ask that they both come to camp. We feel very strongly, and if you have to switch in and out, if we can have both parents at some point during the 2 weeks, I think that's helpful. Um, and in the old days, we discouraged family members interacting with the dogs, because the prevailing sentiment was, and unfortunately in most places still is, that the hotel can be. I saw a question. The hotel can be paid for. We ask that you cover it if that's possible for you. If it's not possible, then yes, we cover all of that. Um, but we used to say don't interact with the dog because the dog needs to bond just with his or her person. And luckily, we have realized that that is probably the dumbest thing I've ever said in my life. Of course, you have to interact with the dog. The dog has to feel like mom and dad and everybody in the family loves them and thinks they're great and, would protect them. And they still bond with their person. And that kind of leads me into the next thing. And that is, you got to let the dog pick. Our dogs pick their people. So you can come in thinking, I really want a golden doodle. And you will end up with, you can think, I want a little golden doodle. You're going to end up with a ginormous black lab. I can almost promise you that. It will be that, the dogs meet 4 or 5 different people that they're appropriate to work with, and they're polite because they're always polite. But when they get to that 6th person, they run in the room, and at least for us, it's super clear, and usually for the families also. The dog just has this look on their face like, "Where have you been? I've waited so long for you to get here." And the dog is madly in love. And we call it, slot B into, or slot, yeah, tab B into slot A. It just fits absolutely perfectly. And you need that kind of initial attraction. And usually that's reciprocated by the family members because and by the individual recipient, because it's pretty hard to want anybody other than the dog that thinks you are the greatest thing ever. Um, and once you have that sort of initial connection and kind of initial bond, we spend 2 weeks really helping you develop it. In the old days, we focused on, getting the dog to retrieve for you and turn the lights on and off and tug open and paw close the doors. And we do a little bit of that now, but the vast majority of camp is really spent helping you sort of have a deep bond. All the dogs know how to do those things. That's not difficult for them. Um, the harder part is wanting to do it for somebody else, who's not the instructor that they've grown up with. So, developing that bond is a big deal. So that's, and you learn a lot about dogs. I think, it's interesting when people talk about national, and this talk has kind of died down now, but off and on, there is talk about a national certification process for service dogs because, as you know, so many people have taken advantage and taken their pets into places that they shouldn't have. Because usually because the pet is terrified, and so when there's talk about that, it normally is they want to see the dog show obedience behaviors. And that means, sit down, stay. But that's not going to help you. That's not what you really need. I mean, you need a dog who will be calm beside you in a restaurant, obviously, and not try to get in your food and not bag and all of that stuff. But you really, those physical positions are super easy to teach, and often what people use to show that the dog is a good dog. But the reality is, that doesn't give you anything. It really doesn't. It's not going to help. I mean, you need a dog who has gone way beyond that stuff. And in order to get there, you need to know a lot about dogs. So I have always wondered why there wasn't a greater emphasis on educating the human side, and being sure that the human side knows everything they need to know to be successful with the dog. So we focus a lot on that while you're here with us. And then we have, aftercare for you so that you're never out there in the world by yourself. We have a great aftercare coordinator. Her name's Megan Hopkins, and she's been here for a long time. And Megan is very good at what she does. And I think it's imperative that you have that. And that's something you don't always get with every program. So it's something that I would ask a lot about. Before you apply somewhere, how long does it usually take for aftercare to get back in touch? How, you'll have Megan's cell phone number. That doesn't happen a lot of places, and you might need it. So I suggest that you at least ask if, when applying to other organizations, how easy it is to get in touch with the aftercare people, and what you can expect there. So, all right, that is a fast sort of nutshell, so that we can have time for some questions. Do we want to go to the next screen? And there we go. Talk about questions. Are there questions?
We do have a few.
All right.
So do you only accept people in your state?
No, we place nationally.
And then may I ask if there is an age limit to receiving a service dog?
There is not an age limit. We have placed dogs with people who are in their late 70s, and the dogs have been very successful there. So there's not a low and there's not a high for canine assistance. It's not really typical. But that's how it is here.
Awesome. Well,
Oh,
thank you
there's
so
a
much.
link to the prelim.
Look at that. Thank you, Lindsay. And then I do have a question. So obviously you, like we talked about, or you talked about, you do not charge for your service dogs. So can you give a
We
little
don't.
bit of background as to how you go about doing that?
We beg for money. We're a 501c3 um, nonprofit, so we raise the money. And one thing that I'm very proud of, my mom, who passed away now a number of years ago, but she and I talked about it when we first were able to start the program. And one of the things that we never wanted to do was use people to raise money, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because if you told me that the only way I could get a dog was to go around and tell people my story and do TV and things like that, I would have done it to get the dog, but I would have hated every second of it, and I would have felt very uncomfortable. So we're very careful about asking people. Some people enjoy it, and then that's great. But for the most part, we try to avoid putting any of that burden on our clients. And so, we have a fundraiser who's wonderful, and we beg.
Awesome. And then how
Works.
many how many on average dogs would you say that you grant per year?
So pre-COVID, we were at about 100 dogs that we placed every year. We're half that or under now. So and we will probably stay there. And the reason is because the research side, figuring out how this can work best for people has become a real focus for us. Like the homeschool program. Um, and how the dogs can learn best and function best in their homes, so we will likely stay small. There are, however, certain conditions that will always take priority um, with us. So and it's just been that way for a long time. It's what we decided early on. And so there's some people who will apply and get a dog almost immediately. And we'll tell you if we don't think you're going to get a dog within a couple of years from us, we will absolutely be honest about that. We used to keep this really long waiting list. It was just awful for people. I mean, awful. Because when you're on the waiting list like that, you just pray that you're next, and you never know. So we don't do it that way anymore.
How long does that process usually take? I know you said you will tell people if not within the next 2 to 3 years, but from start to finish, how long does it typically take? Or does that vary as well?
Um, uh, it varies. I mean, it varies, and part of the reason for that variability is, I would say, start to finish 2 years, but it would be pretty common. But a lot of that is if you want to come to a summer camp because you can't miss school and or something similar. And so some of that is from the family side. From our side, that the application, and save the application for heaven's sakes, because a lot of programs will accept our application in place of theirs. And so because it's kind of a pain in the tuchus, you have to get um, letters of reference and their medical form, etc. So that can take a little while to get done. But once we get that, depending on the reason that the person has applied, you can move pretty quickly from there. So it could be 6 months.
Gotcha. Do you allow the children to be handlers?
Yes, of course. But um, but the dogs, anytime there are parents in the home, really, But dogs are gonna kind of, they know who the parents are. But when kids are younger, the dog almost functions as, mom or dad or both's lieutenant commander, if that makes sense. So while the child can and should handle the dog, the parents should be super involved as well.
Perfect. And then is it okay to have other animals such as dogs?
Absolutely. And you know what? I, it's absolutely fine to have other dogs. If the other dog only loves in all the world the person who is applying, that will be challenging. If the dog, has a relationship with other people in the family, and folks, other people in the family can start sort of, increasing that bond with the dog so that it wouldn't be so upsetting when a new dog came in. That can be helpful. But I understand that there are, for example, with the second timers, people who have one of our dogs, they're often concerned that we will make them give away that dog before we would place a second dog with them. And I got to tell you, I don't think we'd place a dog with somebody who'd be willing to give their dog away to get another dog, if that makes sense. I mean, it's part of your family. I think that would be incredibly hard. So, and you know what? So this is probably not a positive for some people, but those patches on the capes that dogs wear, or the vests, or backpacks that say, "Please don't pet me, I'm working." Okay, so those things never really work. The people just come up and start petting anyway, and they're reading aloud, "Please don't pet me, I'm working," while they're still patting the dog. So we gave up that. We we actually now our dogs all wear "Ask to pet me, I'm friendly." Um, so okay. Are they used to other dogs? Yeah, they're great with cats. They have to grow up with cats. Yeah. Is that what it says? Sorry, I'm
Yep,
half
yep.
blind. Are
Nope, you
they
got
okay
it.
with cats? Yeah. Yeah, yeah. No, they grew up with they might be a little, timid at first because the cats with whom they grow up are forward about making dogs mind their manners. But yeah, no, they have to be good with cats. So, yeah, absolutely. Anything else?
Just checking. I don't see anything on Facebook. Um, Perfect. Yeah, I think we're
That's what I thought too. I thought it said, "Are they okay with cats that used to be dogs?" Yes, I read that and corrected myself. Was thinking,
I
I didn't know they do that surgery.
they do not. I do appreciate you being on here and sharing about canine assistance. It's definitely a very valuable um, organization, especially to our community. So thank you so much for
Ah, my
taking time and
privilege.
sharing more information. We really appreciate it. And if anybody has any questions, Jennifer's information is up here. And then our information, info@jetfoundation.org, is also here. So please feel free to pass questions along. And
Yeah, don't hesitate. I mean, do not hesitate. If you have questions or you need me, just reach out. I'm right there.
Excellent. And then if you didn't see it, Lindsay did put the pre-application in the chat, and we'll make sure to send that along to everybody who was on the call today. We appreciate you again, Jennifer and Lindsay. Thank you also for being here, and we will talk to you all soon. Make sure to check our website to see what other webinars we have coming up, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you guys. Take
Bye.
care.
Thank you.
Bye.